I found a diamond necklace receipt thinking it was my birthday surprise. It turned out to be the first thread in a web of lies that would unravel my husband's entire life. The smell of coffee and bacon hung in the air, a familiar and comforting cloak for a Saturday morning. Mark was humming along to some indie rock station, flipping pancakes with a spatula in one hand and his phone in the other. He shot me a grin over his shoulder, his eyes crinkling at the corners in that way that had made me fall for him 12 years ago. "Happy birthday, beautiful," he said, his voice a low, happy rumble. I smiled, pulling the sash of my silk robe tighter. 35. It sounded so adult. But waking up to this, to him, to the life we'd built, I felt as giddy as I did at 25. "Thank you, honey," I said, leaning over the kitchen island to kiss his cheek. He smelled like his expensive cologne and maple syrup. "They look perfect." "Only the best for the birthday girl," he said, sliding a perfectly golden stack onto a plate. "Big plans tonight. I made reservations at the Alchemist. 8 o'clock. So wear that red dress. The one I like." My heart did a little flutter. The Alchemist was one of those places you had to book months in advance, where the cocktails smoked and the desserts looked like works of art. It was a grand gesture, and Mark was the king of grand gestures. He worked hard, long hours as a senior partner at his law firm, but he always made sure I knew I was his priority. Our life was comfortable, beautiful even. We had the house in the suburbs, 2 amazing kids who were blessedly sleeping in, and a love that felt as solid as the old oak tree in our backyard. Later that day, while the kids were at my mom's and I was getting ready for our big night out, I started gathering Mark's suits for the dry cleaner. He'd come home late from a celebratory dinner with his team the night before and had just tossed his jacket over the armchair in our bedroom. A classic Mark move. As I picked up the charcoal gray wool, my fingers brushed against a crisp piece of paper in the inside breast pocket. Probably a business card or a parking receipt. I almost tossed it, but something made me pull it out. It wasn't a business card. It was a receipt, folded neatly in half. The logo at the top was from Eternity Diamonds, the most exclusive jeweler in the city. My breath caught in my throat. I unfolded it, my hands starting to tremble with a giddy, childish excitement. My birthday. The Alchemist. A receipt from Eternity Diamonds. It was all adding up. For weeks, I'd been unsubtly leaving my laptop open to a page featuring a beautiful, simple, solitaire diamond pendant. It was elegant, timeless, and something I'd never dream of buying for myself. I thought he hadn't noticed, but Mark always noticed. I scanned the receipt, my eyes widening. The item description read, "Solitaire diamond pendant, 1.5 carat platinum chain." The date was from 3 days ago. And then I saw the price. My stomach did a little flip. It was more than our first car had cost. This wasn't just a gift, it was a statement. A wave of love and gratitude washed over me so intensely it almost brought tears to my eyes. He really was the most incredible husband. I quickly folded the receipt, my heart thumping a frantic, happy rhythm against my ribs, and slid it back into his pocket. I couldn't let him know I knew. The surprise was half the fun. I spent the next few hours floating on a cloud, picturing the moment he'd pull out that little velvet box at the restaurant. At dinner, he was perfect. He held my hand across the table, told me I looked stunning, and listened intently as I chattered about my latest art commission. The food was incredible, the wine was divine, and the entire evening felt like a scene from a movie. As the waiter cleared our main courses, Mark reached into his jacket pocket. This is it, I thought, my heart soaring. I arranged my face into what I hoped was a passable look of serene ignorance. He pulled out a slim, elegant envelope, not a box. He slid it across the table to me with a flourish. "Happy birthday, my love," he said, his eyes sparkling in the candlelight. I was confused, but I smiled and opened it. Inside were 2 first-class plane tickets to Bali and a brochure for a 5-star luxury spa retreat for 2 weeks from now. "A little getaway," he explained. "Just us. You've been so stressed with the kids and your work. I thought you deserved a real escape." It was an amazing gift, a thoughtful, generous, incredibly romantic gift. I should have been ecstatic, and a part of me was. I threw my arms around his neck, thanking him profusely, telling him it was the best gift ever. But all the while, a cold, heavy stone was settling in the pit of my stomach. It was a fantastic gift, but it wasn't an $8,000 diamond necklace. All through dessert, and the car ride home, and even as he kissed me goodnight, one question pounded in my head, a frantic, looping drum beat. If the necklace wasn't for me, who was it for? Back home, I couldn't sleep. The spa trip felt like a consolation prize, a distraction. Mark was in the shower, the sound of the water a dull roar in the background of my racing thoughts. I picked up my phone, mindlessly scrolling through social media to try and numb the anxiety. A notification popped up. A colleague of Mark's had posted a group photo from their team dinner the night before, tagging everyone, celebrating a huge win with the best team in the business, and a special early birthday shout-out to our amazing paralegal, Jessica. Jessica, Mark's secretary. She was young, barely 26, bubbly and ambitious. Mark mentioned her all the time, how efficient she was, how she anticipated his every need at the office. An innocent work relationship, I'd always told myself. My thumb hovered over her name, then clicked. Her profile was public, and her latest post from just 2 hours ago was a selfie. She was beaming, her head tilted just so, her blonde hair falling over one shoulder. The caption read, "Spoiled. Some birthdays are just more special than others, feeling so incredibly blessed." And there, resting in the hollow of her throat, catching the light in a blast of brilliant fire, was a delicate platinum chain holding a single, spectacular diamond. The phone felt impossibly heavy in my hand, a black mirror reflecting a twisted version of my life. The room, which had always been my sanctuary, suddenly felt alien and cold. Each familiar object, the framed photo of our wedding day on my nightstand, the antique reading lamp Mark had bought me, the soft cashmere throw folded at the foot of our bed, seemed to mock me. They were props on a stage, and I had just discovered I was the only one who didn't know the play was a tragedy. I couldn't breathe. My lungs seized, and a wave of nausea rolled through me so violently I had to grip the edge of the dresser to keep from collapsing. The smiling, triumphant face of Jessica, adorned with my necklace, was burned into my retinas. The bathroom door creaked open, and a cloud of steam billowed out, followed by Mark. He was wrapped in a fluffy white towel, his hair damp and slicked back, a picture of domestic bliss. "You okay, babe?" he asked, his voice laced with concern. "You look like you've seen a ghost." I have, I thought. The ghost of our marriage. I forced a smile that felt like it might crack my face in two. "Just tired," I managed to say, my own voice sounding distant and strange. "It's been a long day." I quickly locked my phone and placed it face down on the dresser, my hand shaking so badly I almost dropped it. "A good day, though, I hope," he said, coming over to wrap his arms around me from behind. He rested his chin on my shoulder, his skin warm and damp against my silk robe. I flinched, a barely perceptible tremor, but he didn't seem to notice. His touch, which had been my greatest comfort for 12 years, now felt like a violation. I could smell the clean scent of his body wash, the same one he'd used for years, and it suddenly smelled of deceit. "The best," I lied, looking at our reflection in the mirror, his happy, unsuspecting face next to my pale, shattered one. "Bali is going to be amazing. Thank you, Mark. It's perfect." The word tasted like ash in my mouth. He squeezed me tighter. "You deserve it. We deserve it." He kissed my neck, right below my ear, and my blood ran cold. I wanted to scream. I wanted to turn around and claw at his face, to demand answers, to show him the picture on my phone and watch his perfect world crumble. But I didn't. Some primal self-preservation instinct took over. A cold, hard voice in the back of my mind whispered, "Not yet. Don't let him know you know. He will lie. He will twist it. You need proof he can't deny." That night I lay in bed, rigid and still, pretending to be asleep. I faced away from him, my back a stiff wall of silent fury. Every time he shifted or sighed in his sleep, a fresh wave of revulsion washed over me. I replayed every conversation we'd had about Jessica. "Jess is a lifesaver," he'd say. "Honestly, the firm would fall apart without her." I remembered him telling me she was having a hard time, going through a bad breakup, and that he was trying to be a good mentor. A mentor. The bitter laugh that bubbled up in my chest was so forceful, I had to bite down on my pillow to stifle it. How many late nights at the office were spent with her? How many business trips had included a secret second itinerary? The Bali trip. It wasn't a gift. It was a strategy. A way to get me out of the picture so they could play house in the life I had built. The hours crawled by. Around 2 a.m, his breathing deepened into the steady, rhythmic cadence of deep sleep. Now. It was now or never. I slipped out of bed, my movements slow and deliberate, like a cat burglar in my own home. The floorboards were cold beneath my bare feet. His phone was on his nightstand, plugged in, its screen dark. My heart hammered against my ribs so hard I was sure he would hear it. We had an open phone policy, a symbol of our trust. We knew each other's passcodes. It had always been a point of pride for me. Now it felt like the key to Pandora's box. I picked up the phone, its cool metal surface feeling sinister in my trembling hand. I typed in his code, our wedding date, of course. The irony was a punch to the gut. The screen lit up, displaying his home screen wallpaper. A picture of our family at the beach last summer, the kids laughing, me in his arms. The hypocrisy was breathtaking. My thumb hovered over his messages. I was terrified of what I might find, but the need to know was a physical craving, stronger than fear. I scrolled through the list of conversations, his mother, his golf buddies, our contractor, and then there it was, Jessica. My finger trembled as I tapped on her name. The message thread opened. I had to scroll up past a few work-related exchanges from earlier in the day. My eyes scanned the screen, moving upwards, backwards in time. My breath hitched. There were messages from tonight. While we were at dinner, while he was holding my hand and telling me he loved me. The first was a picture from Jessica. The same selfie from her profile, the diamond winking obscenely at the camera. Beneath it, a message from her that made my vision swim. "She'll never shine as bright as this." My stomach lurched, but I forced myself to keep reading. The next message was from Mark, time-stamped 9:15 p.m., right when we would have been finishing our main course. "She has no idea. Swallowed the Bali story whole. You look incredible, by the way." Bile rose in my throat. It was real. It was calculated. It was cruel. But the final message, the one that shattered the last remaining fragment of my heart into dust, was from Jessica. It came in just after we'd gotten home. "Can't wait to have you all to myself for 2 weeks," she wrote. "Think she'll enjoy her solo trip when you get called back for a work emergency?" My whole world tilted on its axis. I sank to the floor, the cold wood a shocking contrast to the fire raging through my veins. A solo trip. The plan was to ship me off to Bali and then manufacture some last-minute crisis that would force him to stay behind with her. They weren't just having an affair. They were orchestrating my life, moving me around like a pawn on their sordid little chessboard. The sheer arrogance, the cold-blooded planning of it all was what truly gutted me. This wasn't a mistake, a moment of weakness. This was a conspiracy. I sat there on the floor of our bedroom, clutching his phone, for what felt like hours. The initial shock gave way to a chilling, diamond-hard clarity. Tears were useless. Screaming would only give him the satisfaction of seeing me broken. No, I wouldn't give him that. I wouldn't give her that. She'll never shine as bright as this. Jessica's words echoed in my head. She thought she had won. She thought she was the sun, and I was just a pale, fading moon. She was about to find out how wrong she was. With a newfound purpose, I stood up. My hands were steady now. I carefully put his phone back on the charger, placing it at the exact angle it was before. I slid back into bed, my movements silent and fluid. I lay there, my eyes wide open in the darkness, and I began to plan. He wanted a performance? I would give him the performance of a lifetime. The next morning, I was the perfect wife. I woke up with a smile, made his favorite breakfast eggs Benedict with homemade hollandaise, and chattered excitedly about Bali. I researched resorts on my laptop at the kitchen table, asking his opinion on private villas versus beachfront suites. "What do you think, honey? This one has a private infinity pool," I'd say, my voice dripping with manufactured enthusiasm. He ate it up. He watched me, a smug, satisfied little smile playing on his lips. He thought he was so clever. He thought I was so simple. "Whatever you want, beautiful," he'd say, kissing the top of my head before he left for work. "It's your trip." The hypocrisy was so thick I could choke on it, but I just smiled sweetly. "Our trip," I corrected him gently. "I can't wait to have you all to myself." The look in his eyes, a flicker of something, guilt perhaps, or just the discomfort of a liar being told the truth, was my first small victory. For the next week and a half, I was an actress worthy of an Oscar. I packed. I bought new bikinis. I got a facial and a pedicure. I let him see me happy, blissfully ignorant, and completely in love. It was the hardest thing I'd ever done. Every touch felt like a brand. Every "I love you" was a fresh stab in the heart. At night, I would lie next to him, my body rigid with suppressed rage, and wait for him to fall asleep. Then, I would slip out of bed and continue my own preparations. My first call was to a private investigator. I needed more than just text messages. I needed irrefutable, undeniable proof. I wanted photos. I wanted a detailed timeline of their affair. I wanted to know every hotel they'd stayed in, every restaurant they'd dined at. I drained a significant portion of my personal savings account to pay for the best. "I want everything," I told the gruff ex-cop on the phone, "and I need it before the 14th. My next call was to our financial advisor. I feigned a sudden interest in our long-term investments, asking for a full, detailed breakdown of all our assets' joint accounts, his personal accounts, stock portfolios, property deeds. "Mark is just so busy," I explained with a light, airy laugh. "I thought I'd get a head start on our end-of-year review." The advisor, a man we'd used for years, was more than happy to oblige the dutiful wife. The documents that arrived in my inbox were a revelation. I spent hours each night, hunched over my laptop at the dining room table, a glass of wine my only companion, tracing the money. And I found it. The hidden credit card account, opened 6 months ago. The charges were blatant. Lingerie stores I'd never shopped at. Extravagant dinners for two on nights he was supposedly working late. And there, 3 weeks ago, a charge for $8,000 at Eternity Diamonds. The day before our scheduled flight to Bali, the PI's report landed in my email. It was a thick digital file full of glossy, high-resolution photos that took my breath away. Mark and Jessica kissing in the parking garage of his office. Mark and Jessica holding hands, strolling through a park on a Tuesday afternoon. Mark and Jessica checking into a boutique hotel downtown, his arm slung possessively around her waist. The report detailed a 6-month affair, meticulously documented. He wasn't just my husband. He was a stranger living a double life. That evening, I finished packing our suitcases. Mine was filled with summer dresses and sunscreen. His was filled with every piece of evidence I had gathered. I printed the financial statements, the secret credit card bills with the incriminating purchases highlighted in lurid yellow. I printed every single text message, and on the very top, I printed the best of the PI's photos in full, shocking color. I packed his designer suits, his expensive shoes, and nestled the thick manila envelope containing the ruins of our marriage right on top. The next morning, the day of our flight, he was buzzing with excitement, or maybe it was relief. He loaded the suitcases into the trunk of the town car we'd ordered for the airport. He kissed the kids goodbye, promising to bring them back souvenirs. He was playing the role of the devoted husband and father to the hilt. As we settled into the plush leather seats of the car, he took my hand. "Ready for paradise?" he asked, his eyes gleaming. I smiled, a genuine smile for the first time in what felt like an eternity. "I can't wait," I said, "but we're making a little stop first." He looked confused. "A stop? Our flight is in 3 hours." "It won't take long," I assured him, leaning forward to speak to the driver. I gave him an address that made the color drain from Mark's face, the address of his law firm. "What are we doing here?" he asked, his voice tight with a sudden, dawning panic. "Just a little detour," I said calmly, watching the familiar glass and steel skyscraper grow closer. I had arranged it all. I had called his senior partner, a man named Robert, who had been a mentor to Mark and a friend to our family for years. I had told him there was an urgent family matter we needed to discuss with him and Mark in person before we left the country. He had agreed immediately, his voice filled with concern. As the car pulled up to the curb, I turned to my husband, my voice as cold and sharp as a shard of glass. "Before we go to paradise, you're going to give me a divorce, and then you're going to explain to Robert why the firm's rising star has been using a company credit card to fund his affair with his secretary." Mark stared at me, his face a mask of disbelief. The smug, confident man from 5 minutes ago had vanished, replaced by a pale, cornered animal. "What are you talking about?" he stammered, his hand reflexively tightening on mine. I pulled away, the contact repulsive. "A divorce? Company credit card? Sarah, you're not making any sense. You must be stressed about the trip." I let out a short, sharp laugh. It was a sound devoid of any humor. "Oh, I'm not stressed, Mark. I'm enlightened." I opened my purse and pulled out a single, glossy 8x10 photo, the pièce de résistance from the PI's collection. It was a crystal-clear shot of him and Jessica, locked in a passionate kiss outside a hotel, the name The Marlowe, clearly visible on the awning behind them. I held it up between us. "Does this make sense?" His eyes darted from the photo to my face, then back again. The color that had drained from his cheeks was replaced by a splotchy, ugly red. He opened his mouth, then closed it again, a fish gasping for air. The carefully constructed walls of his world were crumbling, and he was scrambling to hold them up. "Sarah, that's not what it looks like. We were celebrating a case. We all had too much to drink." "Save it," I said, my voice dangerously low. "Save the lies for Robert. I'm sure he'll be fascinated to hear about the celebrations that led to a $5,000 charge at this hotel on the firm's dime. Not to mention the $8,000 signing bonus for Jessica that was paid out from a client retainer account." I had spent my nights well. While he was dreaming of his tropical tryst, I was becoming an expert in our finances, a forensic accountant fueled by rage and betrayal. The driver opened my door and I slid out of the car, my movements calm and deliberate. Mark scrambled out after me. "Sarah, wait, let's just go. Let's go to Bali and talk about this." "We can fix this," he pleaded, his voice cracking. He reached for my arm. I turned to face him on the pavement, the city's morning rush swirling around us. "Fix this? You think a week in a villa fixes a conspiracy to humiliate me? To abandon me in a foreign country while you live out your pathetic midlife crisis with a child half my age?" I gestured to the car. "Your suitcase is in the trunk. It has everything you'll need for your meeting with Robert. All the evidence. Consider it my parting gift." I walked into the gleaming lobby of his law firm, my heels clicking purposefully on the marble floor. Mark followed a few steps behind, a dog with its tail between its legs. The receptionist, a woman I'd known for years, gave me a warm smile. "Sarah, what a surprise. Here to see Mark off." Something like that, I said, my voice steady. We have a meeting with Robert Sterling. Moments later, we were being escorted into Robert's corner office on the 45th floor. The view of the city was breathtaking, a panorama of power and success that Mark had always coveted. Robert, a distinguished man in his late 60s with kind eyes, stood to greet us. "Sarah, Mark, good to see you, though I confess I'm worried. I hope everything is all right." "Not exactly, Robert," I said, taking the seat he offered. Mark remained standing, shifting his weight from foot to foot like a schoolboy about to be disciplined. "Mark has something he needs to tell you." I watched as my husband, the brilliant, charismatic lawyer, completely unraveled. He stammered. He lied. He tried to minimize. He painted a picture of a lonely, overworked man who made a terrible mistake. Robert listened patiently, his expression growing stonier with every pathetic excuse. When Mark finally trailed off, his voice hoarse, I spoke. "He's being modest," I said, my tone crisp and professional. I opened my purse and placed the file folder containing the highlighted credit card statements and a few of the more damning photos on Robert's immaculate mahogany desk. This wasn't a mistake. It was a calculated long-term affair, funded in part by this firm and its clients. I have a full accounting of it, and I suspect the partners, not to mention the State Bar Association, would be very interested to see it. Robert's face was grim. He didn't even glance at Mark. His eyes were fixed on me, filled with a mixture of pity and respect. "Sarah, I am so incredibly sorry. I had no idea." "I know you didn't, Robert," I said softly, "which is why I came to you. I'm leaving him. I'm filing for divorce today. I don't want to destroy this firm, which you've all worked so hard to build. But I will not be made a fool of. I want a clean break. I want our assets divided fairly with a substantial penalty for financial infidelity and misappropriation of funds, and I want him gone. From my house, from my life." I stood up, my part in this drama played. "I'll let my lawyer handle the details. She'll be in touch this afternoon." I walked out of that office without a single backward glance. I didn't see the look of utter devastation on Mark's face or the cold fury in Robert's. I didn't need to. I could feel the shock waves of the bomb I had just detonated. As I rode the elevator down, a profound sense of calm settled over me. It wasn't triumph, not yet, but it was the quiet, steady hum of control regained. I took a cab home. The house felt huge and silent when I walked in. I went straight to our bedroom and pulled my suitcase from the hallway. I didn't unpack. I just opened it and stared at the bikinis and sundresses, remnants of a life that no longer existed. My phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number. "Whatever she told you is a lie. You're a pathetic, washed-up old hag, and he loves me. You've ruined his life, and you'll get nothing." Jessica. The little viper had found her courage. I almost laughed. Ruined his life? I had just handed him the consequences of his own actions. I deleted the message without replying. She wasn't worth my energy. A few minutes later, another text came through, this one from my mother. "Honey, a courier just dropped off a package for you here. It's from Mark's office. Looks like legal documents." My heart pounded. So soon? My lawyer wasn't supposed to file until later. What could he possibly be sending me? I called my mom. "Can you open it, Mom? Read it to me." There was a pause, the sound of tearing paper. Her voice, when it came back on the line, was tight with confusion and anger. "Sarah, these are eviction papers. He's filed an emergency petition to have you removed from the house. It says the house is not marital property. It was bought by a trust his father set up for him before we were married, and you're not named as a beneficiary." The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the air from my lungs. Eviction, trust fund, not marital property. It was a language I didn't understand, from a reality I had never considered. For 12 years, this hadn't been his house. It had been our house. The place I'd brought our babies home from the hospital. The walls I had painted. the garden I had nurtured. Every memory, every milestone of our shared life was embedded in its very foundation. And in a single cruel legal maneuver, he was trying to rip it all away, to render me not just a wronged wife, but a homeless one. The sheer breathtaking cruelty of it was what shocked me most. This wasn't a panicked reaction. This was a pre-planned contingency. A legal, in case of emergency, break glass he had kept hidden for the entirety of our marriage. The calm I had felt leaving his office evaporated, replaced by a white-hot fury. He hadn't just cheated on me. He had been playing a different game all along, one where I was always destined to lose. I took a deep, shuddering breath, my knuckles white as I gripped the phone. "Okay, Mom," I said, my voice eerily calm. "Thank you. Don't worry. I'll handle this." I ended the call and immediately dialed my lawyer, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Helen whom I'd found through a women's advocacy group. I explained the situation, my voice low and controlled, relaying the details my mother had read. Helen was silent for a moment before letting out a low whistle. "He's playing dirty," she said, her voice grim. "It's a classic bully tactic, an aggressive first move to scare you into a lowball settlement. The trust makes it complicated, but not impossible. Don't panic, Sarah, and whatever you do, do not leave that house." Panic was a luxury I couldn't afford. Mark had underestimated me. He and his little girlfriend had dismissed me as a pathetic, washed-up old hag. He thought I was just a suburban wife, an artist who played with paints and hosted dinner parties. He'd forgotten that before I was his wife, I was the daughter of a forensic accountant. I had spent my childhood summers organizing my father's files, learning to read balance sheets before I could properly ride a bike. I knew my way around a paper trail. That night, after putting the kids to bed with stories and kisses that felt more precious and fragile than ever, I descended into the basement. In a dusty corner, behind old ski equipment and boxes of holiday decorations, was Mark's old filing cabinet, the one he'd meant to take to a storage unit for years but had never gotten around to. It was locked, of course, but a bobby pin and a memory of a misspent youth were all I needed. I spent the entire night going through old bank statements, tax returns, and property documents, some dating back 15 years. Fueled by coffee and a burning sense of injustice, I built a timeline. I cross-referenced dates, account numbers, and transfers. And then around 4 a.m., buried in a folder labeled Family Trust Mess, I found it. The smoking gun. It was a document related to a major renovation we had done on the house 8 years ago. A new kitchen, and a master suite extension. Mark had told me it was a loan from his father, but the paperwork told a different story. To fund the renovation, Mark had dissolved a significant portion of the original trust and used the capital to pay the contractors. Then, he had refinanced the house, our house, to replenish the trust's funds. The loan wasn't from his father. The loan was from a bank, secured by the very property he claimed I had no stake in. And most importantly, my signature was on every single page of that refinancing application as co-borrower. By refinancing, he had effectively converted a non-marital asset into a marital one. He had entangled the house so deeply in our shared financial life that his claim of it being separate property was a lie, a legally provable lie. I scanned the documents, my hands trembling not with fear, but with exhilaration. He wasn't just a cheat and a liar. He was a fool. The next morning, I met Helen at her office. I laid the documents on her desk. She read them, a slow, predatory smile spreading across her face. "Oh, Sarah," she said, looking up at me with gleaming eyes, "this isn't just a smoking gun. This is a cannon." 2 days later, we were in a mediator's office. Mark was there, flanked by a slick, expensive-looking lawyer. He wouldn't look at me, his jaw set in a hard, arrogant line. Jessica, I later learned, had been put on an indefinite leave of absence from the firm. Robert, it seemed, had a low tolerance for scandal. Mark's lawyer began, outlining their position. The house was his. I was entitled to standard alimony and child support, but I would be vacating the property immediately. They were being generous, he said, by not suing me for defamation for my unfounded accusations against Mark at his place of business. I let him finish. Then Helen slid a single file across the table. "I believe you'll find this relevant," she said sweetly. I watched Mark's face as he and his lawyer read through the refinancing documents. I watched the color drain from it again, this time for good. I saw his lawyer lean in and whisper something in his ear, his expression urgent. The bravado, the arrogance, it all just melted away, leaving behind the small, pathetic man he truly was. Helen laid out our terms. The house was mine, free and clear. I would buy out his half of the equity using the funds from his personal investment portfolio, the one I had so diligently gotten a statement for. I wanted full physical custody of the children. He would have supervised visitation, pending a court-ordered psychological evaluation for his poor judgment. I wanted 60% of our liquid marital assets as punitive damages for the proven financial infidelity, and for my silence regarding the client retainer funds he had misappropriated, a little detail I'd held back from Robert for just this occasion. The firm's charitable foundation would make a sizable anonymous donation to a trust for our children's college education. It was brutal. It was total. And he had no choice but to accept. To fight would be to risk not just a messy divorce, but disbarment and a potential criminal investigation. I signed the papers and walked out of that office into the bright afternoon sun, feeling lighter than I had in years. I hadn't just won a divorce. I had reclaimed my life. I had protected my children. I had fought for my home. Later that day, a moving van pulled up to the house. It wasn't for me. It was for Mark. I stood at the window and watched him carry the last of his boxes to his car, a man stripped of his family, his home, and his carefully crafted facade. He paused and looked up at the house, at me, his eyes filled with a desperate, defeated rage. I didn't gloat. I didn't smile. I just drew the curtains, shutting him out for good. The house was quiet now, and it was all mine. It wasn't shining as bright as a diamond, perhaps. It was something far better. It was a home, solid and real, and it was finally, truly safe.